are taking your own four-wheel drive, there's a few things we need to check over first. Just make sure you've had your vehicle serviced and it's all in good order. Get the mechanic to check it over. Make sure your tyres are in good order. And depending on where you want to go on the island, if you just want to run along the main beach and into a few of the lakes and things, your standard four-wheel drive will be adequate. But if you want to go up to the Cape and do a few of the more adventurous tracks, you'd want to do some minor modifications to your vehicle, like a 2-inch suspension lift, maybe slightly bigger tyres, better aftermarket suspension. A snorkel is preferable as well, just so that your vehicle's a bit more capable in the softer sandy areas. Once you're confident that your vehicle's all set and good to go and everything's in good order, the next step will be planning where you're going to go and where we're going to stay, and making up a bit of an itinerary of how to get to these places and when to get there, because everything's governed around the tide. A lot of different things we can do when we go to Fraser. We can stay in, there's like motel accommodation, and like the Kingfisher Resort, Yurong Village, Happy Valley, there's all accommodation there, which is nice to stay in those different places. Down from there we have the rental houses on the island, which are in Kingfisher, Yurong, Happy Valley, and there's a lot of rental houses at Orchid Beach, which are great to stay in. And most of the houses you can fit a couple of families in there, and it's nice to have somewhere to go for a warm shower and wash the sand off at the end of the day. The other options are camping in designated camp areas where there's toilets and showers, and there's a dingo fence around the camp areas, which is good if you've got children. The other option is the free camp along the beach, where you're just amongst the elements and camping right on the beach, and walk straight out in front of your campsite and go for a fish. It's absolutely beautiful. Once we've come to a decision on where we're going to stay and what accommodation and everything we wish to choose on the island, we have to get a vehicle permit for our vehicle to take our vehicles onto the island. From there, you'll either book your resort accommodation or your private houses, or if we're staying in campgrounds, we need to go online to the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Services. We go on there and book our camp permits. When I'm planning my trip onto the island, I always check the tides, and I try and arrive at the barge about 2 hours before low tide, which gives me plenty of time to drive up the beach, and I don't have to be in a hurry because I know the tide's still on its way out. Then you can stop and get photos and collect some pippies and just enjoy the drive up the beach. You'll be nice and relaxed and not in a hurry. If we want to go and see Lake Mackenzie, go to Eli Creek, go up to the Cape. All these places take a fair while to get to, and I generally will plan everything around the tides. So I make a fairly extensive plan so that we can be travelling at low tide and not at high tide, so that we can get to all these different places. So planning where you want to be and using the low tide advantage definitely makes a lot of sense. Once we've come to a decision on where we're going to stay and what accommodation and everything we wish to choose on the island, it's also a good idea to book a barge ticket to get onto the island. We normally go through Rainbow Beach to Inskip Point. The barges just run backwards and forwards all day, so you don't have to book a time, or you can just rock up whenever you're ready to go across. If you go from Hervey Bay, you need to book these barges a long way in advance because they do get booked out. And you have to be there at a specific time, and they will load you onto the barges and drop you off on the western side of the island. Here we are just coming into the barge. Come in nice and gently, and always remember to let your tyres down on the Rainbow Beach side. Don't try and get to the barge with your tyres up hard thinking you'll let them down on the barge, because 99% of the time it won't work and you'll end up bogged. As we come into the barge, we just make sure we adhere to all the instructions that the deckhand gives us, and he'll park your vehicle up, put you in the spot that he wants you on the barge. And always remember to turn your vehicle off, put your handbrake on, and leave your car in gear so that it doesn't roll around on the barge. Today is a beautiful calm day, but some days it is a little bit choppy through here and the vehicles rock around a little bit, so make sure you have your handbrakes and in gear so that your vehicles can't move around. We're getting close to the Fraser Island side now. You'll see the boom gate gets unlatched and they lower it down a little bit before you get to the beach. So I generally start my engine up again, ready to go. I keep my foot on the brake, leave the handbrake on. And then, the deckhand will guide the vehicles off and let each vehicle know that's going to go off first. As you come off the barge, you'll notice that the vehicles that are waiting for the barge are lined up on our left here. That's the etiquette of the island, basically. The vehicles that are coming onto the barge will go up into the softer sand and allow everybody that's getting onto the beach for the first time to be able to drive on the harder sand. So when you come back to meet the barge, you just drive along the beach and you'll see where the boom gates left a mark in the sand where the barge has been dropping the cars off. You'll park your vehicle just before that and back up on the high sand so that the vehicles coming off the barge, you've got plenty of room to turn and carry on along the hard sand. This is the softest part of the beach, getting around this point, because there's no surf, there's no surf waves to flatten the beach off, so just go nice and steady. Once we get onto the surf beach, it's very smooth and you can do 80 kilometres an hour without any problem at all. We try and avoid driving in the sea only because it's bad for your vehicle. So if you do have to touch the water, go extremely slowly so that it doesn't spray up all underneath your car, but otherwise just try and avoid it. If the tide was much higher here, we wouldn't be able to get around here. There's an inland track next to us, which is simply called the inland track. And if the tide's high, like it's impossible to pass through here, you just use that inland track, and that goes 11 kilometres along the beach, and that misses all this soft bit. Yeah, as we get around the corner and we've got actual surf, the beach gets smoother and smoother and wider and wider. So you've got more area to drive on and it's a lot smoother. But it'd be another 2 or 3 kilometres of tight beach yet. Most people are a little bit anxious when they drive on the island for the first time on the sand. But there's no need to be. All in all, it's very easy. Main rule is just take your time and enjoy the day. Don't be in a rush. Just cruise along and take it steady and everything will be perfectly fine. When you do come to the island, allow plenty of time to travel, because sometimes there can be things that will hold you up a little bit. Make sure you stop and see everything on the way. Don't be in a mad rush to get everywhere. Stop and have a look at all the things along the way, because there's so many amazing and awesome little sections to the island that we just drive straight past all the time that we can stop and look at and enjoy. Try and travel at low tide, because you'll be on firmer sand and the sand will be a darker colour, as in it'll look wet. Where the sand is damp, it's very hard and firm. You're not going to get bogged, just like driving on the road really. When the sand is firm, travel at low tide. When we are travelling along the beach, all the road rules apply exactly the same, because it is classed as a gazetted road. So you always stay to your left and the other vehicle will pass on your right hand side. So if you're heading north along the beach etiquette is you'll move up away from the water and allow the vehicles that are going south, which are travelling along against the water, to pass on the low side. And then when you're heading south, stay as close to the water as you can without going in the water, because we don't want salt water on our vehicles. But you can drive very close to the edge of the water and not get any salt water on your vehicle. This allows plenty of room for vehicles that are heading north to pass without them having to go up into the soft sand. And when there's washouts and dips and on neap tides, the beach is very hilly and it's a lot slower to drive on because it's a more uneven beach. When you have really big tides, the tide flattens the beach out and it's like driving on a runway. It's absolutely perfect. So when it is hilly and all washed out like that, you'll find there's only a small area for vehicles to drive on at any speed, so we have to share these zones and be courteous of each other and allow space for the oncoming vehicles. But always stick to your correct side of the beach. Don't try and use the right hand side of the beach if you're heading south. Always stay to the left, exactly the same as on the road, otherwise people will get confused and it'll end up being an accident. And when there is an oncoming vehicle, it's courteous just to put your indicator onto the left so they know that your intention is to stay to the left. and they will put their indicator onto the left, and then everybody's happy and passes without any problems at all. It just means we're not second guessing what the other driver's thinking. When you are travelling, the things to look out for are the little creeks that run out across the beach. Most of these there's only a little lip on the edge of it, you can drive through them at reasonable speed, but there are a few, especially if you've had rain, that will be a bit deeper and you'll have to slow right down for. The other one to look out for is when you look up ahead and you see the sand change colour to the lighter colour and then it's not damp anymore, start to slow down and be aware that that could be soft sand, because you don't want to drive into really soft sand at 80 kilometres an hour because you can lose control of your vehicle. So start slowing down for these sections before you get to them. If you get there and it's just light soft sand on top, then it's fine, just proceed, keep going. Because the tides are quite big, the beach is very smooth and very flat. When you drive the beach when there's neap tides, where there's not a lot of run between the high and the low, the beach can get very hilly because there's not enough difference between the high and the low tide to flatten the beaches out. The way to tell if it's deep or shallow, as you approach it, if there's little rapids in the water or it's the water's disturbed on top, it's generally shallow. If you come up to one and the water's very smooth and you don't see the little rapids, slow down because it's most likely going to be a lot deeper. And that's, as we travel along, we don't have to slow down for every single creek, we just watch out for the smooth water and the rapidy water. I try and avoid travelling at night on the beach because at night time, doesn't matter what spotlights you've got, the spray off the salt is just like driving in fog and you cannot see very far at all. Occasionally we do have to drive at night if we're going fishing and doing things like that, so you will be going very slowly at night because the visibility is terrible. Driving through the tracks at night is no problem at all. You can see perfectly fine. It's only really driving on the beach with that salt mist that comes off the ocean makes it very difficult to see in the dark. When we're driving through the tracks, most of the tracks here are one-way tracks, but they will be signed one way. All the other tracks are two-way tracks, so we just have to be very careful of oncoming vehicles. So you will, especially if you're going into Lake Mackenzie and things like that, you will find buses and oncoming vehicles coming from the other direction. So just be aware of this, take it easy, and generally if somebody's towing a van or a boat or something like that, the vehicle that is not towing will generally move out of the way and allow them to get through because it's easier for them to get stuck, whereas if we don't have a trailer on, we can manoeuvre around and get off the edge of the road so that they can pass. And there's a lot of passing areas through those tracks that are two-way tracks, and they're all signed either one-way or two-way, so you know where you are and you know what to be expecting. The main thing is when a bus or another car comes or something comes, don't be in a rush. Just, you've got all the time in the world, go nice and steady. Don't feel panicked. We've got a vehicle come up behind us now, so I'll just indicate, slow down a little bit, let him go through, give him plenty of room. He's travelling a lot quicker than we are. All the townships and all the tourist attractions along 75 Mile Beach have been made into 40 kilometre an hour areas, so just be very aware of these signs. They have one sign letting you know that there's a 40k zone coming up, and then you'll get to the 40k zone. Definitely do 40k's an hour, because in a 40k zone, 1 kilometre over and they can give you a ticket, and the police during peak times do set speed traps up through there to stop people speeding in these areas. Only because there's a lot of people, a lot of children, especially in front of the Maheno wreck at Eli Creek and places like that. There's just a huge number of people, and you cannot speed through those areas. The speed limit is 80 kilometres an hour on the rest of the beach unless otherwise signed, and the beach is really flat. You feel as though you could do 100 along the beach, no problem at all. But the main reason they enforce the 80k's an hour speed limit is because we're all running 18 psi in our tyres, and our tyres are quite soft. So sitting on the lower speed definitely makes it a lot safer. Yeah, when we're on the island, enjoying the island, always make sure you've got a designated driver. Don't feel as though we're in a remote area and we can drink drive, because they quite often do set up breathalyzer traps, I suppose you'd call them, where they'll pull every vehicle over and everyone will have to blow in the bag. And unfortunately, a lot of people end up going just over the legal limit because they've had a few beers. So just be aware of that. Don't have your beer until you get to the destination, or have a designated driver. It's just as simple as that. We can't drink drive on the island.
I've never seen the police pull anyone over on the island that's not doing something wrong. So if you've got your seatbelt on and you're doing the speed limit, the police normally will never bother you. In 30 years, I've never seen a police officer pull anyone over that's not doing something stupid. So if you do the right thing, they leave you alone over here, which is great. And it always pays to hit anything as straight as you can. Go straight across the creeks and straight up and over any little mounds. Don't get side on. Always hit them and approach them at a 90-degree. We're just coming up to Eli Creek. When you cross Eli Creek, always slow right down, because quite often it can get deep. It has quite a steep drop off on this side. Like today, if it's got a drop off like that, try and go straight off it rather than on an angle. And this is all fresh water. At the moment it's just after high tide, about an hour and a half after high tide, and you see the smoother part of the sand that I'm driving on. Stay down closer to the water because the sand's going to be a lot firmer. But remember, when a car comes the other way and you have to go up into this soft sand, you need to slow down a bit because it'll throw your vehicle around. When a car comes, you'll come back up to here and let them pass on your right hand side. But while there's no cars coming, stay down on the firm sand so it's nice and easy on your vehicle to cruise along the beach. That haze we can see on the beach there is just the salt spray off the waves. So when we drive on the beach, we'll put our headlights on so oncoming traffic can see us. If you've got your lights on, people can see you a lot more clearly. When you're going through these sections of seepage, it's hard to tell where the salt finishes and the fresh begins. So generally what I do is, when there's no seepage, I just have a look and get a rough idea of the beach distance. So that to my right there's a little bit of seepage and then the salt water. So the salt water is basically at the top of the waves there, where the waves push up. So I wouldn't go and drive anywhere on my right hand side now, because that is most likely definitely salt. When we get to the seepage areas, I'll try and stay about this distance away from the sea, and then that should keep me out of the salt water. This is an airstrip on the island here. They've got a couple of witches' hats here and a few more up front. So there's a couple there to let us know that there's a landing strip up here. And then as we travel further along, there'll be more witches' hats just marking out the section of beach that they want to land their plane on. If you can, stay completely out of that coned off area. If the tide's higher and you have to drive through there, just check for planes behind you and in front of you, and then go through that area that they've got sectioned off. If you can see a plane in the distance, just work out where he's going and what he's doing before you drive through that airstrip. Generally you'll be certain that if they're going to land, you can see it quite easily that they're coming into land, and just pull up and stay out of the way. If you ever get bogged in these tracks, which it does happen every now and then, not very often, simply stop where you are, let more air out of your tyres, and more than likely somebody will be behind you and they'll probably be able to nudge you backwards to get you rolling again. But if you're getting stuck in the sand, it's always tyre pressure. Just let some more air out of your tyres. Don't dig under your wheels, just get yourself back on top and get going again with the lower air pressure. Here we are driving on a rainy day on the island, and as you can see, it's really difficult because the whole beach just looks like water, and it's hard to tell whether they're washouts or whether there's a creek there. So yeah, try and avoid it if you can. If it's a nasty rainy day, just have a camp day and stay off the beach. See the beach now, you can actually see the sand and it doesn't just look all like water because it hasn't rained heavily here yet, and that's the difference. When you're driving in the wet weather, it's really difficult to see where there's a washout or any obstructions on the beach. Just going around Piungan Rocks, and it's definitely tidal. If it's high tide, you can't do it, and you still have to be very, very careful, even at low tide, and make sure that the rocks don't take you out into the ocean. Yeah, this is still all fine. But if you have to go through any water at all, don't do it, because there can be rocks in the water that you don't see, and if you hit one of those, you simply just get bogged, and yeah, all goes bad from there.
Thanks for watching our videos. If you're wanting more information on about Fraser and travelling the beaches and enjoying all the beautiful things to see over there, we have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, all about Fraser, and on there's a collection of videos that you can watch and go through, and you'll pick up a huge amount of knowledge watching the videos, so when you get there it won't feel like the first time at all.